Hey everyone, my name is Dante and welcome back to Story Hub, your hub for the best stories on Reddit. I, female, 27, used to be an escort, hooker, from 18 until I was 23. I'm not proud of it, but I also don't give a frick because I did what I had to do to keep studying. And a roof over my head. That's how I met my now fiancé, male 37, though he was never my client. We began to date when I was 25 and 3 or 4 months after that his brother-in-law exposed me. No idea how he found out. Because there's no way my fiancé knew and thus we had to come clean in front of his whole family. Yes, I did that. Yes, he knows. Yes, he doesn't care. It was 2 years ago. At that time, we got over it. After that there was a span of 3-4 months in where my mother-in-law and some of my fiancé's aunts and cousin policed their husband when I was around. It was really weird tbh because these dudes were like 40-60 and I wasn't that desperate. So my fiancé shut their bullshit hard, and even when his family still gives me the side eye from time to time, we thought it was behind us. He proposed last year and 5 months ago we found out that I was pregnant. We were really happy about it and we told his family as soon as we knew. His sisters and young brother were happy for us, but his mom took me aside and begged me to be honest with her and asked if this was really my fiancé's child. I was taken aback, but I just rolled my eyes and said yes. She gave me some shitty speech about how she only wanted to make sure and that she was happy to be a grandmother. Well, last weekend we were at his parents with his family and some of his friends and we were talking about the name, how he might look. Small talk, we will love him regardless, but there's always some "oh, I hope he gets your nose. Yeah, I like your eyes. I hope he gets them" comments. And my father-in-law said that he and his children have a birthmark in the inner thigh. And that even his grandchildren, one of my sister-in-law's kids, got them, so our baby might too. And then he said, but how can we know from who he got it? It may as well be from me, my boy, or my brothers, and he and his brothers began to laugh. My fiancé got mad, and before he could say anything I said I don't get it, and my father-in-law was yeah because it runs in the family, and I said again I don't get it. Why would he get it from you? And he began to get nervous and said because you know, it's just a joke opus, and I said but I don't get it and you all laughed. Explain it got to the point that some of his friends said hey, it's not funny, so he excused himself and left. Later my fiancé's Bill came to me and said that I was wrong for embarrassing him like that in his own house and that I knew what the joke was about, and because of my past, I shouldn't be surprised. Now they're all demanding that I apologize to my father-in-law. Not the idiot. They're sexually harassing you, aggressively, in a family setting. Honestly, I would have added it sounds like you're implying that we've had sex, and I don't understand why that's a joke you'd make to your daughter-in-law. Father-in-law clearly knows he's wrong. I say push back as hard as you can. Not the idiot. Father-in-law literally made a joke about him or other men from the family impregnating you. How that would make you the idiot is beyond me. How does one even get to crossing that kind of line? WTF. So me, female 26, and my husband, 28 meters, who I'll call Jake for this story, have been together for 5 years and married for 3. We have recently started trying for a baby as we both felt like that was the next step in our life together, and 3 weeks ago I got a positive test back. We were really happy and told our families, and now my mom and mother-in-law want to throw a big baby shower for us. It was just super good news all around. Well, 2 nights ago me and Jake were getting ready for bed when he reminded me to go through the house and make sure all the lights were off. Now he can be a little lazy at times, and it has become a nightly routine for me to make sure all the lights are off that he leaves on before we go to bed. I wasn't feeling very well and asked if he could just do it since he wasn't doing anything and was literally standing by the door. He then tells me no, this is what is expected of you every night. I was a little hurt, but I didn't want to fight with him, so I just did it. When I came back, Jake goes on this very long and unprovoked rant saying things like just because you are pregnant does not mean anything will change and you are still expected to cook, clean, and do all the chores every day, because how can you be expected to be a mother if you can't handle a little work? He wasn't yelling or anything. He was talking to me quietly like he was 2 inches tall. I was shocked because I had never heard him say anything like this. The rant went on for about 30 minutes before I interjected and asked, well, what do you plan on doing to help me with all of this? He then got extremely defensive, saying he works his ass off at his job to provide for me and what is going to be our future children. For context, I don't work ATM. My job was not paying enough to justify me going, so I am a full-time college student. He ended by saying that it doesn't matter how I feel physically or mentally. It is a mother's job to push through, and if he helped and babied me I wouldn't be a good mother. I got extremely upset and started yelling, and I said that I wish I would have known this is how you felt before I got pregnant with your baby. There was a moment of silence before he started crying and he left for the night to stay at his mother's house. He hasn't been back yet, and my mother-in-law and sister-in-law have called me berating me and saying I broke Jake's heart with what I said and I need to apologize immediately, and until I do he isn't coming home. I don't know how to feel. So am I the idiot for yelling at my husband after he said he isn't helping me with anything during the pregnancy because it's a mother's job to deal with it? Edit. First, I want to thank you all for your responses. I'm sorry I haven't really responded to anyone specifically, but I really do appreciate you guys. A few of you asked if I told my mother-in-law and sister-in-law what he said, which I did. They basically said I was being sensitive and all he meant was pregnancy isn't an excuse to be lazy. He meant no harm. Okay. I am getting some things together and I'm going to be headed to my mom and dad's house. My mom is furious with him and doesn't want me apologizing to him or talking to him without the situation either being recorded or having a witness. Regardless, I am okay and will be okay. I do appreciate all of you though. You have opened my eyes to many things I may have been ignoring or looking past over the years. Not the idiot. You're in an abusive relationship. He's wrong. Things will change for the worse. Men are often more abusive during a woman's pregnancy because they can't control the pregnancy itself. But you need to run, not the idiot. Abusers often start their abuse during life changes like this. This is terrifying behavior and you should strongly consider all of your options, including abortion. My house is surrounded by 2 gardens, one in the front, facing the street, and one in the back, bordering my neighbor's gardens. When my parents and grandparents moved into our house 26 years ago, they planted a thick hedge around the entire property. They also installed a rose arch over the pathway to our front door, and my grandfather was always busy keeping up the garden, planting, weeding, keeping everything very tidy. My grandfather died in 2002, and after that, the garden was neglected for a few years as my parents were still working and my brother and I were in university school. But then, in 2005, my mom read something that said we should plant stuff to help the bees, and she took over the gardens, planting lilacs, rhododendrons, roses, and various berries. Later, we decided to also install raised garden beds with various kitchen herbs. My mom is now over 70 years old and has officially given the house over to my brother and me, so that we won't be taxed on inheriting it when she dies. Since then, I've been sporadically taking care of the gardens. I like them in their wild shape with all the birds, bees, bumblebees, and butterflies flying around. In autumn we get hedgehogs, and we've been visited by a fox recently, which sent my cats into a panic. Really quick, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to drop a like. Then, recently, we received a letter from the city stating that our garden was interfering with the safety of the street, because the hedge was overgrowing the pavement and contained poisonous berries which were a danger to children. Now, my brother trims the hedge every month to make sure nothing is overgrowing the pavement in any way, and while the berries are poisonous, to get to them you'd have to be quite resilient because they're surrounded by thorns. They are also known to be ideal food for some local birds. So, I contacted our local Nature Conservation Association and asked if they would like to have a look at our gardens and maybe tell us if we could improve anything to make them even more nature-friendly. They came, looked around, and then told us they rarely see gardens so in touch with nature. They approved our gardens as especially nature-friendly and contacted the city to tell them that from their point of view, any changes would be considered unfriendly to nature, and since our city prides itself with once being one of the green capitals in our country, they had to budge. Don't mess with my gardens. Not the idiot. There was a guy in one of the suburbs near me that had a similar approach. He let all the native plants grow wild around his house because he liked living near nature. His neighbors complained to the local council that it was unsightly and a fire hazard. The council sent him notices to trim it all back and clean it up. He refused them all. The council set a date that they would come and remove all trees, plants, and shrubs and charge him for the cost involved. He contacted a local environmental agency that came and inspected his property, and they found 2 species of endangered birds had nested there. One was assumed extinct. After that, there was nothing they could do as the birds were protected by law. I just told this story at a gathering over the holidays when a family member asked if I, a female, experienced sexism while serving in the military. On the whole, I had a great experience serving and most of my coworkers were really amazing. Except for Brad, fake name. Brad was the living worst. He was a lazy, know-it-all, but really only a know enough to get by and keep up appearances, misogynist. During our first in-office interaction, he leaned back and said, totally unprompted and completely out of context, "Yeah, I've never met a woman who was smarter than me," to which I immediately replied, "That's weird, because I've met a lot of women smarter than you." Thus began our Cold War. Part of our job was to maintain a certain level of knowledge and proficiency among an array of different topics and specialties. We had a whole book that we were more or less supposed to know front to back. Because this was part of my job, I made sure to stay proficient. Not everyone thought this was important. Now Brad, the smartest person in the room, was in the training shop and was in charge of creating and proctoring our weekly proficiency and knowledge tests, a test which I aced every week, scoring higher than the males, who did not care that I scored higher, and even catching errors that Brad would make. Brad's fragile ego could not allow him to admit that me, a gasp woman, knew even more than the other men and sometimes even more than Brad himself. So he would find arbitrary reasons to fail me every week. Didn't like the specific color of blue ink I was using. Fail. Didn't like that I abbreviated my rank when signing the test. Fail. Didn't think I put enough thought into choosing the multiple choice answer. Fail. Walked into the testing room before him, thus invalidating my test results. Yes, literally. Fail. We all laughed off this behavior because he was only making himself look insane. And my unit commander saw that I was getting all of my test questions correct. Again, it was my job to know that stuff, so he was unfazed by my 0% scores. Not to mention, this was all internal testing, so no one outside our org ever got the results. Not really a big deal. Until Brad decides that he needs to nitpick a non-issue. He decided that instead of doing his weekly test, he was going to spend the hour lecturing us on how to properly classify presentations. Evidently, a female in the office had misspelled a classification on a slide, think classified versus unclassified, thus creating a major security breach. She didn't. Now don't get me wrong, using proper classifications is incredibly important and is top priority in creating a presentation. But the difference between secret and secret is not going to bring down the establishment. Most people, except for Brad evidently, can use common sense and know that a slide marked secret should still be treated as secret. Because onto the petty revenge. Brad made a ponderous presentation, including slides that actually included an array of different classified material. This presentation was supposed to take all hour. By the 5th or 6th slide, however, we get to some really sensitive information. And what has been missing from every single one of Brad's slides? You guessed it. A classification on the top and bottom of the slide. Brad had just spent 15 minutes teaching to a room full of adult professionals how important slide classifications were and how essential it was to have them on the top and the bottom. Now, should I have made a note and approached him after the presentation? Maybe, but did I? Frick no. I got my petty revenge. So I waited until he took a pause between slides and said, loudly, from the back of the room, "Hey Brad, maybe next time you want to teach us how important it is to classify a slide, you might want to actually classify your own work. You've got some sensitive information on there that isn't classified, which you just explained to us as a major security breach and should be reported to the commander. None of your slides have had classifications up to now, unless this presentation is an example of what you don't want us to do." Shocked Pikachu face. Brad looked like a trout gasping for life as he glanced at his computer, to me, then back to the screen. Everyone started laughing and two of our superiors actually got up to leave saying they had things that were actually important to get to. Sometimes the best revenge is just knowing how to do your job and do it well, despite the Brads of the world. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed, don't forget to like and subscribe.